Good. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning. Not sure what time it is as you were watching this. We wish that we were with you in person today, but we are not. So thank you so much for joining our session and coming to hear a little bit more about how the University of South Carolina in our Office of Undergraduate Admissions has managed some mischief with our student employees. My name is Katherine Hilson. I'm one of the assistant directors in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. And here today with me is
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Ballew, and I work as the coordinator of student programs and communication with Katherine, and specifically working on a team that supports student programs and all the various communication in our office.
So we are two very large Harry Potter fans, and we're going to get a little bit more into detail about just how we started to use Harry Potter and the wonderful wizarding world that exists with that for our student employees. But we are going to talk a little bit about the historical context of the ACC, Harry Potter and House Cup results, best practices, lessons learned. And then unfortunately, of course, we won't be able to have actual Q&A with you, but we included our contact information if you do have any questions that we can answer for you. So to get started, what in the world is the ACC? So in 2016 and prior to all of that in our Office of Undergraduate Admissions, we had 3 full-time employees who were known as our communication staff, who their entire jobs, 8:30 to 5 every single day, were to answer our incoming phone calls. And so they really served as more of an operator role. They would try to answer questions as quickly as possible, but sometimes when you're in an admissions office or really any office, you can get a queue backed up. And so a lot of times they were just trying to find other staff on the phones who could help with a call. And a lot of times those questions were not necessarily something that needed to be escalated. And so one of the things that we found just in staff surveys and just, again, talking to staff about all the different parts of the office is that a lot of staff really struggled with phones and they kind of dreaded their phone duty. We maybe have all been there a little bit of just, you're really working on something or you're doing a project or whatever it may be, and then you get that interruption phone call. And of course, we want to have amazing customer service and be available for prospective students and families. And so we started having this idea of, what could we do? Could we, have current students serve in more of that? Let me see if I can answer your question. And then if I can't, then I can escalate the call. And so we created what we call the admissions call center. We actually have a funny joke because obviously we're an SEC institution. So it's very funny that we have this abbreviated ACC, but admissions call center is what people wanted to call it. And so we started with that. So we can kind of give you a little bit of context just in terms of our volume. So for some of you, you may look at these numbers and like, wow, that's really great. They only had that few calls. And others of you might say, wow, that's a lot. So wherever you are in that spectrum, we just wanted to kind of give you some data to show you those real results in real time. So from January 2016 to December 2016, because the call center started technically in November of 2016, we had just under 42,000 incoming phone calls. So that's incoming phone calls directly to our main admissions line. So that's not going to include any additional phone calls directly to staff. This is directly to our main admissions line. And then about 30,000 of those phone calls were transferred to professional staff members. So while 12,000 of those were answered by our communication staff, I'm still thinking about the volume of 30,000 phone calls being transferred out, across a smaller staff is just a lot. And so we knew that going into it. So to kind of give you a glimpse into the structure of the call center, again, we had that soft opening in October of 2016, but our first real semester with students and having a structure was spring 2017. We have averaged about 20 students for each single semester. Some semesters we had as little as 12. Some semesters we've had up to 20. I think maybe at one point in time we even had 22. They typically work an average of 8 to 10 hours a week. Again, 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. The least that we've had, again, is about a student that's worked about 8 hours, and then the most would be at 20 hours. And that's a university policy for us, is that we cannot have students who are taking classes currently work over 20 hours fully across the institution. So they might even have 2 campus jobs, but those 2 campus jobs cannot have more than 20 hours of work per week. We also have a lead team. So we started the lead team, I believe it was in the spring semester of 2017. It could have been fall 2017. But basically, this is a group. We have 4 junior or senior members who they really serve as a mentor and support new returning members. They also have a little bit of other responsibilities that Elizabeth will touch on in just a little bit. But they are really awesome and they kind of, again, lead our team, which is why we call them the lead team. And then the students also have the opportunity to work student holidays, winter break, summer break, spring break, and, voting day, whatever it may be. So we have them work anytime that we're open. Those are elected opportunities for them just to get a few extra hours. So when we established the call center, we saw amazing results very, very quickly. And so again, I'm going to kind of walk you through some of those. But this is what we call the pre-Hogwarts house phase as well. So again, we'll get into what that means in just a minute. But the year of 2017 to 2018, we averaged 14 student employees. And so they worked an average of 15 hours a week. We do pay our students minimum wage, and we've been very fortunate that they still come back and work for us. But we are, again, paying them about $7.25 an hour, just to kind of give you context for the overall cost of just where we are in terms of the average of how many employees, the hours they work, and then what they get paid for that. So we're not really sure exactly what happened in 2017, but we had a lot of phone calls. So, that was a really great year for us also in sports and a few other things, but we maybe just had more people calling us for whatever reasons, but we did have over 50,000 phone calls, again, to that main line of admissions, and almost 35,000 were answered by our newly established call center. So I know that the numbers before we were off by 12,000, but this was very different from the year before, just in terms of the volume that we saw. And then also, again, that 35,000 of those phone calls were answered directly by our students, never getting transferred out or up or needing to be escalated. And also, I should note that transferring a call doesn't necessarily mean that it stayed in the admissions office and was escalated to a counselor or coordinator. It means that it could have been transferred to another office, such as financial aid or the registrar, or orientation or something like that. As we all know, we have a lot of conversations, and sometimes people just get to our phone tree and push directly to talk to us. So that also transfer rate, will never ever be zero, because we'll always have to transfer to other offices. In addition, we noticed we started having some free time off of the phones. So we started having our students do a number of different things that really impacted us in the office. So they started packaging some letters for us. So whether that was an inquiry letter or another thing, they stuffed over 50,000 of those on a rolling basis, which was huge for us, just to have, again, hands on deck to be able to do some of those things that maybe in the past staff needed to set aside very specific time to do. They also wrote a lot of handwritten notes for us. And whether that was, a congratulations card or even just a thanks for visiting campus card, one of those options. And then also something that we had not really done very well before, in my biased opinion, is that we had a lot of return mail we didn't necessarily always know what to do with. And so they actually took on a pretty large project and cleaned a lot of those records for us. And we got a new CRM in 2016. We got Slate in 2016. And so we wanted to start fresh with our return mail. And so they would go through and clean a lot of those records for us, which was very, very helpful as well. So we noticed, of course, as always, you might have some students who maybe are a little bit less motivated, maybe distracted by their phone, maybe, as we joked in our description of this session, are on TikTok and you're just, like, what are you guys doing? So we came up with this idea, and I will let Elizabeth share a little bit more about it, but basically what was a weekend marathon of watching Harry Potter turned into one of the best things that has honestly happened to our office, especially our student staff. So the Hogwarts fans that we are, we realized there's four lead team members. We could have 4 teams. There's 4 houses in Harry Potter. If you're very unfamiliar with Harry Potter, we apologize. We're trying to bring you along with us. But basically, each lead team member is like a prefect of their house, and they're all divided, and the entire team is set across these 4 houses. And they all receive house points for this House Cup tournament that takes a semester long for different tasks. So they maybe will get extra points if they have certain interactions, or if they, take on a special project for me or Elizabeth. And they also get points for academic achievements. They are students first. So, if they bring us an A graded paper, or they get an A on a test or whatever, we will give them points for that. If they cover a friendship, again, we need them to be there all the time from 8:30 to 5. And so things come up. If someone needs to take, a little bit of time off or whatever is happening, they have a conflict. If someone covers their shift, they can get extra points. So there's all of these points assigned to everything. There also are points that can be deducted. So if you're not on task, if you're maybe on your cell phone or maybe doing homework, and that, we see that, we're going to deduct points from the team. And because it's a team mentality and not this like one for one type thing, we've really noticed an increase in motivation and accountability. So instead of Elizabeth and I coming in and, people kind of hushing and throwing their phones away, if we're not directly there, sometimes we found that, especially if it's a lead team member or another house member being like, hey, you should not do your homework right now so we don't get deducted points. And that's been really great too for just their peer mentorship to each other, holding each other accountable, but also kind of standing up and saying like, hey, we're going to all be responsible and motivated because we're here to do a good job and work hard. And that's just been incredible to watch, as a supervisor, but also as a student affairs professional. So to give you again the data of the first year of the Hogwarts house, we had an average of 18 students, but they worked less hours per week on average. So again, just trying to give you the context of that. Really strange, but we had a lot less phone calls, but we also realized that this was really a great year for us in terms of how much we had implemented in our slate communication via email. We also had increased, our accessibility in our admissions portal and a number of other things. So maybe students did not need or feel the need to call as often, but we still saw a smaller transfer rate, more notes written, more inquiries that we started having our regional recruiters and our counselors send in their inquiry cards back to the office, and our students would input those inquiry cards, which was huge because we saw the turnaround time increase tenfold versus, when your staff is out on the road and they're doing all these sorts of different things and traveling. We know how daunting that can be to get back to your hotel room and feel like you need to enter in, all of your inquiry cards from the day. So the fact that our staff was able to mail these back and our students were able to input that information for them was really beneficial. And they did a lot of those cards. We also had them start talking online. We have a live chat feature and they did a great job with that, but they also handled over half of all of our chats for the entire year for the entire office, which was, again, very helpful, very beneficial. Another thing that just, again, when staff are able to direct their attention and time away from some of those more coverage pieces to, whatever else they need to focus on, it's just super helpful. And finally, I would be remiss if I did not include that we realize they're having really great conversations. We're trusting them on the phones. We're trusting them with chats. We're trusting them with all these things. Could we trust them with some of our emails? And like most admissions offices, yes, we get a lot of phone calls, but we sure also get a lot of emails to our main admissions office email. So we slowly had lead team take, probably about 10 emails each week, and maybe a little bit more than that, but they would answer those emails. We would proof them just to make sure, because again, when it's in writing, it's like even more scary, as everyone knows. And they did a really great job with that. And we were really excited that they were able to help out with even just the 630 that they were able to do. Then we get into our second year of the Hogwarts House Cup. And again, just see so much more productivity and so many more things. So we did have more student employees, but again, less hours per week. We started seeing that as more and more of a trend with a lot of our student employees. They're not looking to work 20 hours a week, or they're trying to complement maybe another on-campus job. So again, they maybe can't go above that average hour time. So we did have to hire more students just to add in the coverage. So I do want to point out that this time frame, of course, middle of March of 2020, everything completely shut down because of COVID, and we were unable to have our student staff on the phone, let alone any staff on the phone. And so we know that our call volume is usually highest in March for us. We average a little over 4,000 phone calls each March, just because that's our main decision week and deadlines. So we know we probably missed, about 10,000 phone calls between March and April of last year. But that 91% of all of the calls answered, which means, again, only 9% of those calls were ever transferred out to any other office or within our own office. And that to me is just, again, huge, thinking about all of the time saved from some of those phone calls that, were answered by our student staff. And then they wrote more note cards than they had ever written. We actually had a goal for 10,000. I don't know if we would have met it in our last 2 months, but we did have that goal. And again, we're just super excited to see how many notes they wrote. They also put in more additional inquiries. And then they had over 3,000 online chats, which is an increase of 1,800, which again is just phenomenal and huge, and the numbers speak for themselves. But the biggest one is that we ended up taking on the emails overall, which was a huge task and ask, but they succeeded and definitely excelled. So over 22,000 emails were answered by our students. Again, we did not proof all 22,000 of those, but it just is such a huge help. And I think that everyone who's experienced just kind of that daunting, you go into the main admissions email box and you just see emails on end and you're wondering how you're going to divvy them up. It was just amazing to see our students really step in and take over that task and that role for us, again, so that our staff can maybe focus on other things. So that is like a lot of the historical context of everything. I know I have talked very quickly and run through a lot of numbers with you, but I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to talk about some of the best practices for motivating our students. And then maybe she can share a little bit more too about just how she came up with the Hogwarts idea, because that was very fun. Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you so much for handling all of our context. But yes, yeah, who knew a lazy weekend watching Harry Potter would turn into something that really shaped the office. So yeah, but we are going to go over, thinking about the Hogwarts house competition and how it's really impacted our students for the best. Kind of thinking and reflecting on it for this presentation, what kind of our 7 best practices are for motivating students, whether you walk away and you want to implement some sort of internal competition, or you just want to reflect on how you can be the best supervisor or create a team environment that you really enjoy. So we have 7 best practices, because if you are a Harry Potter nerd, there are 7 books in the franchise, 8 movies, but we'll focus in on the books today. So there will be some Harry Potter references, as you can see, for each point. So I promise, if you're not a Harry Potter fan, just stick with us, that we'll still have some good points. So the first point, that is the theme of the first book, which is the Sorcerer's Stone, is thinking about, it's a new environment. And you're setting the scene for what is going to be this entire experience. So the first thing that we always say is to, set realistic priorities. So again, setting the scene, whether you're in this, training today, potentially working on a student group for your office, or wanting to, pitch an idea for a student group, or you yourself right now currently manage a student group and you're wanting to reevaluate what their role is or how they can add additional responsibilities. So first thing we always encourage, Katherine even said it in her presentation, is we are, very big on reminding students that they are student employees. And that is a very big theme in our office, is that understanding that if they're on our team, we are so grateful to have them, and they obviously have some fantastic numbers to basically justify why they are a part of our team. But we remember that they're students first. So understanding that probably being in the office might not be their first priority. The priority is their degree and their academics, but how can you make this a worthwhile experience for them in the meantime? Setting clear expectations for the role. This can genuinely start from the job description. If you want to evaluate your job description currently, or if you're writing one, we are very clear in our job expectation that we have high expectations for this role. It's not a homework job, as we say, that they can sit and do homework between phone calls. One thing that we'll see later on in our 7 points is, we say if there's a need to meet it. And so that's one of the expectations we have. So we actually have, not only the job description that we post, and sometimes we'll go through the Career Center. As you can see, when it comes to recruiting students, we actually are very proud that for the most part, we're able to recruit students through our current team members, through friends, or, roommates. We have siblings on our team right now. So it's kind of fun to be able to see that they're recommending their friends, because they're able to go to them and say, hey, this is the job that I work. It's kind of a high energy environment, very much, high expectations for the job, but I think you'd be perfect for this. So that is what has worked for us. But again, you might want to consider a career center or public posting, whatever works for you. Think about that job description. Think about potentially setting up different expectations. On our hiring website, we have not only the description, but then a separate list of expectations. And then pointed interview questions. So this is something that we in time have kind of reevaluated our interviews. Usually we prefer to do them in person. Even though, yes, it's a phone job, we want to be able to see these students and see, kind of the dedication they're having. to the position, just talk to them a little bit more. In our interview, that's kind of also like an information session. So while they're, answering these questions that we're giving them to kind of test their knowledge about the campus, or, how to put their best customer service forward, we're also talking to them about the job and some of the expectations we have for them, so they kind of understand what they're getting into from the get-go. And then, of course, reevaluating these expectations. So again, we're always going back to our interview questions and thinking, how can we ask, these situational questions and get a good answer from them. We found, for example, through even just these past couple years, that first-year students, unfortunately, were not the best fit for our team. And it's not because we don't love their experience. They obviously just went through the admissions process, but we actually found that they're still getting used to campus and what every campus has to offer. So we just found that we like students who are a little bit older, have a little bit more experience on campus. So if there happens to be a call and it needs the attention of not only our office, but the bursar, the registrar orientation, that they're very comfortable knowing where to send that student. So that was something that we went back to the drawing board and reevaluated from there. Our second point is related to communication. So like when the Chamber of Secrets was opened in the second book, there's a lot of rumors, a lot of fears, what's going on, a lot of information and misinformation. So you want to think a lot about your communication with your students. This starts at new student employee training or any type of orientation that you're offering. It's important to, we actually were thinking back to how we first trained our new students back in 2017. And I'll be honest, at the time, Katherine had just started in this position. I was starting as a grad student helping out with this opportunity. And we were like, we just need bodies on the phone. And so admittedly, we just said, read the website and put them on hold if you have a question. And we found that they actually wanted to learn more information. They wanted to be able to assist these callers even better. You can see that in the data that Katherine went over, that they're able to have these longer conversations. And so it was a building of trust. But with that, of course, we had to revamp training, and we still do every single semester. We reevaluate, what training is important and how we can deliver that training. So thinking about that, if you're able to set aside time to specifically train students, what does that look like? Whether it's a part of their hours, is it a separate opportunity they have to come in for? We have a separate orientation session that we offer for all of our students. That's required for them to be there at least once, if not, more throughout the semester. But we're always offering other opportunities as well for students. We also input a manual because, of course, as they were learning more information, we needed to put it somewhere that wasn't just the website. So different things that you might want to think about. The conducive part, of course, is that we offer right now, currently our training is to read the manual. So really good for those visual learners. And then for more of our auditory learners, we actually sit and talk about what's in the manual and what kind of scenarios they may encounter on the phone. Thinking, of course, we're all working with admissions and or trying to get students admitted. So communicating updates from your office. How are you going to communicate those to your team? Is it email? Is it a manual? Whatever it may be that's best for your team that is going to get their attention. And then also making sure that through these, email or through these updates, that through, training, how are you providing them that feedback and those updates to make sure that they have the information, the tools they need to really succeed at the position. All right, third point is understanding your role as a supervisor. So like the Prisoner of Azkaban, arguably we think Professor Lupin was one of the best defense against the dark arts professors at Hogwarts. So thinking about how he is presented in this book in particular, we want you to think about how you can also have an impact on your students. So one thing is, of course, reflecting on the type of supervisor you want to be. We are all shaped because of, previous supervisors that we've had, the good, the bad, the in between. We have all worked with other individuals who, supervised us, and we were like, this is what I want to do if I ever get into this position, or this is how I want to treat people. So thinking about what kind of supervisor you do want to be, but then also understanding that working with students, and this is the student affairs professionals, talking between Katherine and I, is that you have the opportunity to be a mentor to these students. Oftentimes you are working with students who are going to be younger than you, who are going through different life, steps that you might have also gone through or can relate to. So, setting a good example for them, potentially stepping into that mentorship role. I put a note about counseling. You do not have to have a counseling background to work with students. We both kind of have that experience, and we enjoy being mentors and listening to these students and being a part of their lives. But you can decide, how much or how little, your position might be with these students. But you might want to consider mentorship. If anything, if you're like, hey, I want to view them as student employees, or potentially just don't have, that space to be able to, offer them that all the time that they may need, depending on the role. Just remember to have empathy all the time. We're recalling when a situation comes up how, this is oftentimes the student's first position they've had, or, only second position professionalism that they've had. So it's important to kind of remember that sometimes, the good, the bad, the in between. Sometimes you see their first successes as a young professional. Sometimes you have to remind them, hey, that's not how we ask off of work, or that's not how we send an email to a supervisor. And that's okay. It's those teachable moments that, you gotta have to be ready for if you're working with such young student employees. And then, of course, evaluating feedback. I added this and kind of realized this might be more of my personality, but when I receive feedback from, about how a student performed or a conversation they had, or, even if it wasn't a good conversation, if it was more negative feedback that we were receiving, I always kind of take a step back and think, is it something that I was aware of beforehand? Is it a piece of information that I hadn't shared with the team, or updates? On the flip side, was it something that was part of their performance or behavior that I actually noticed beforehand that I didn't say something, or was going to talk to them later about? So I kind of try to take on a teacher role and think, is it something that I could have done to assist, or avoid this, situation, or to help the situation, whatever it may be. So if you're that kind of personality like mine, to take a step back, that would be something that I would encourage you to do, just to really be the best supervisor you could possibly be. All right, and on to book 4, The Goblet of Fire. I feel like this is the one you see the most on TV, so maybe we'll have a better reference if you're not a Harry Potter fan. But this is what we consider to be like your Triwizard Tournament, understanding and utilizing the strengths of your students. So as you can see with the data that Katherine previously presented, we were able to add responsibilities to these students, and it's still growing. Some things get phased out, some things are big asks for us, like the emails, but it was amazing to be able to see how we were able to add to these students' responsibilities, while still maintaining kind of the number of students that we had. Obviously we added some as our responsibilities grew. But just being able to have these responsibilities is something that hopefully your office may be able to consider as well. So as you add these responsibilities, you might want to encourage students to take a step back and think, is it something that can be a team goal, or is it something that I can appoint different individuals to do? We said earlier that one of our mottos is to find a need and meet it. So for example, when we took on note cards, and also doing like inquiries, for example, inquiries just come in as they come in. It's not really a goal that we can meet, or this like achievable number, versus note cards, as we said, we had a number of like 10,000 in mind when we were kind of at a peak for note cards. And so instead of making it something where it was like, hey, every student has to write note cards and this is the minimum you need to meet, we just made it something where, hey, if you enjoy writing note cards, and we do have students who just absolutely love to do that, that is something that you can do, as we call like a tertiary task. So that's something where if the phones aren't ringing, work on your note cards, again, finding a need and meeting it. Versus there's going to be some students on our team who are data driven and they love inquiry cards. They love kind of the just the quiet that comes with just being able to input data in. So we just kind of say it doesn't have to be, both. It can be either or, so long as you're helping to, the team overall. So that's something that you might want to consider, is if you have the ability to divide and conquer some tasks is to potentially do that. And then of course, my just fun note is trying to be creative. I absolutely love that my job calls for creativity sometimes when it comes to different tasks that we're assigned. It's really cool that in this position we have been asked and trusted to do, some tasks because of how productive our students can be. And sometimes we seek it out because we know it's a slower time and how can we help the office be more productive. But if we're ever given a task, I try to make it creative. Like sometimes I'll call things a scavenger hunt, or I'll just put a fun graphic in it so it just catches their attention a little bit more. Any of those little things that you can do to make it more fun or to theme a task, it really goes the extra mile for these students and sometimes catches their attention. All right, on to number 5, the Order of the Phoenix. We're calling this Dumbledore's Army. And so this is, of course, kind of this almost the root of where the Hogwarts house kind of, came to be, was that we actually already had a peer leadership, our ACC lead team. And it worked out perfectly that there was 4 of them and there were 4 houses. So it all kind of came together from there. But if you were able to consider incorporating a peer leader opportunity, I would definitely encourage it. You're going to see, your teamwork and just your student program become an actual team, rather than just individuals who come to work and do their job. And maybe they talk to another, maybe they don't, depending on how your office is set up. But this was really, I think, where we saw a difference in the accountability between peers, stemming from the competition, yes, and kind of that eagerness to win, but also I think being peer mentors. I think before we had lead team, we did just encourage peer mentorship in terms of if you were a returning member to assist a new member, sit next to them and kind of let them help you out with conversations. But then we were able to grow our leadership team and our lead team to be juniors and seniors who specifically take on that role of assisting with training. Obviously with COVID, it's a little bit different now, but they used to sit right next to each other and make sure that if you specifically got a phone call that was kind of worrisome, you can put them on hold and freak out for a second, but there was someone right there next to you who can help answer that question. So I think you'll really see your program hopefully blossom into a team if especially you can just potentially consider a mentorship opportunity. And number 6, from the Half-Blood Prince, this was super specific, but thinking about how they had to defeat who shall not be named, Voldemort, and how they were able to defeat him was, learning more about him and just making sure that they were always learning. So that goes into our theme of always learning. Again, this is more of a student affairs professional in me and in Katherine, but we, a couple of semesters ago, considered coaching, and we've been incorporating that every single semester since then. I will admit it's a time dedication. It takes about 2 weeks for me to sit down one-on-one with students. And it can be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. I will go on a walk with them if we're on campus or go to a coffee shop or meet virtually as we're doing right now. But it's a great opportunity for me to get to know the students, to see where they're at, academically or professionally outside of, the call center. But also I feel like it really helps them feel like they're part of the team, that, Katherine and I are here to actually talk to them and get to know them and value what they do for our office. So again, that is something that if you're able to consider, coaching is something that we would encourage. But we understand not every professional can give up 2 weeks to sit and talk to students, and that might not be realistic. So if there's anything you might want to consider, it's some sort of evaluation process just to give that feedback to students about, what they're doing well and things that they can improve on, because again, that's working towards their professional development overall. You also might want to consider promoting or offering additional opportunities to student employees. Again, you're going to have some students who probably come to you and say, I really enjoy this job. Maybe they're looking for more work. So there's another, avenue that you can point them to within the office. I know my lead team in particular, they love to meet with other individuals in the office to just get to know a little bit more about the admissions process from the point of view of international students or student athletes or our in-state team, out-of-state. So it's really great to be able to promote that collaboration if you're able to. And then of course, the always learning element is that there's going to be mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Your students are going to make mistakes. And just remembering, again, taking a step back to know that it just means that they're learning. It means that there's teachable moments. Of course, you're going to have, unfortunately, or hopefully you never do, performance issues. We have seen, admittedly, we've seen a fair share of things where we've had to have those difficult conversations, but we're hopeful that even, as we work through a conversation, that they're learning from it as young professionals and taking that with them, into their first potential big position outside of their college degree. And then last but not least, the ultimate victory at the Battle of Hogwarts is that recognition and celebration piece. We have one overarching theme of this entire presentation is that this came to me from a lazy weekend on the couch. And I'm pretty sure I even texted Katherine because I was so eager to share my idea. And I think my husband was tired of me like talking about it and building upon this Hogwarts thing. So I'm texting Katherine, going on Monday, pulled a student out who was a Hogwarts fan, and we worked on this. But one overarching theme is that it was basically free for us to do this. Did not cost anything outside of the fact that we already have paraphernalia from Hogwarts because we're just nerdy that way. So considering cost-free ways to potentially reward your students and to celebrate their hard work, it can be as simple as forwarding an email if you get positive feedback from one of your colleagues about something a student did or a good conversation they had, anything, is forwarding that feedback pretty instantly to let them know, hey, someone else is thinking about you and thanking you for what you did. That can be, literally cost-free. Another thing that we love to do, partially because we just are so proud of the, output that our students often, have each year, is we love to, update the office or different areas to say, hey, we accomplished this, the students have done this. Do you mind sending them a thank you note? So we'll set up for them a little virtual thank you note that they can sign, super easy. And that often gets a lot of positive feedback from around the office. So that's something you might want to consider. Or of course, you might want to walk away with this and say, that's fantastic. I'm going to do a competition. So again, you do not need to be a Hogwarts or Harry Potter franchise fan. You might want to consider, even just utilizing your school's mascot. If you have a mascot or a rival mascot, you can incorporate some sort of competition or school colors. Even if it's just, hey, little badges that they can earn or work towards, something that you can kind of attainable goals for them that hopefully would be cost-free for you. That would be something for you to potentially walk away and consider. And of course, if you were able to, you can always go for the gifts and the swag, the celebrations. We love potlucks in our office. So that's something that we feel like is an entire team celebration that we can offer. We love to celebrate our seniors who have especially been with us sometimes for up to 3 years in our office. And that's a note about retention, is that we've actually noticed through all of this, we've had an increase in retention in our students. And it's not something that we necessarily went in with that goal. It was just kind of a very grateful benefit that came from it, is that I think the students enjoyed the atmosphere of work a little bit more. They always look forward to what house they were going to be sorted in next semester, because we do sort them into new houses and new teams each semester to keep the competition and spirit alive. But they're working. They want to come back because I think they enjoy it to see who's going to win. So that has been a very, very lovely benefit of that. So we're very proud to have some students who stick with us for upwards of 3 years. So that might be something to consider through all of this.
So just to wrap up, I know we've thrown a lot at you, so hopefully, you can go back and re-review this if need be, but just going over some of those best practices that Elizabeth, walked through every single one, but just making sure you're setting realistic priorities, not only for your students, but also for yourself. Communication, as we all know, is key. Understanding your role, but also their role, and use their strengths. I think that's a very big one. Again, as she pointed out, we have some students who we could pay all the money in the world and they still wouldn't write a note card, but then you have students who want to come in and they get through 100 inquiry cards in a shift. So looking at their strengths, that mentorship versus supervision, and having, both of those hats and those lenses. And then we're all lifelong learners, hopefully. They're still learning, we're still learning. And then the recognition and teamwork and celebrating successes. And another thing I just thought of, which again is very inexpensive, minor cost, but something that we do is we decorate our call center in the color of the team who won the semester before. So we have different like about me sheets that they all fill out. So we literally just pay for the colored paper and the markers that they use or whatnot. But it's very fun because the team who won the year before or the semester before gets to walk in and see their team color the entire semester. And so it's just, again, that's something that's very inexpensive and it's fun for them, and they love to kind of have some friendly competition with that. So that is all that we have for you all. Again, we wish that we were in person and able to take some questions from you. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us via email and let us know if you do have any questions. And Elizabeth, I don't know if you have any other final thoughts or comments.
I don't. I say I should have thought of something like creatively Harry Potter at the end, but I don't. So
well, technically the mischief was managed,
it
so we
was
can
all
flick our wands.
I say at the end of this, you can feel like you are a sorcerer yourself of going back to your students and managing all the cell phone use and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all again for tuning in. And again, let us know if you have any questions, and we hope that you enjoyed our presentation. Thanks. Bye.